It's a different kind of mental battle when you go from building a life of success to then living in a homeless shelter in Alcoh0l. Yeah, Alcoh0l. That's in London, Uxbridge area, for those who don't know. And with your child as well, with other mentally ill people within that shelter. It's a different type of mental strain when you've seen all of that. And honestly, the mental battle that I faced led to me feeling disgraced, ashamed, guilty, and of course, guilty for my wrong decisions. It was my poor choices and my poor decision making that made it lead to that, essentially, isn't it? And I think it's very important to take accountability. And so that's exactly what I've had to do for myself in order for me to see myself progress in this particular chapter of my life. So I had a comment on one of the parts of my series. I had a comment and it was saying, Chanel, I don't even know how you didn't end up in a mental institution from the things that you experienced. And thankfully, I didn't get there. I would honestly owe it to my spiritual foundation and my faith and just my strength as a person that didn't lead me to that place. But I tell you what, I encountered battles in my mind that almost led me to trigger warning, taking my life several times. And I think there's even been an incident online where you guys almost witnessed that. And I'm sorry for everybody I started with in that period, but I was at my lowest and my darkest. I'm going to share with you a bit about that today. But just to touch up upon that, I am a survivor. And it's not many of us who make it out the woods, if I'm being honest. And I'm very grateful to have gotten this space, standing firm on obviously spiritual things. I did have a comment as well that was like, can you please share with us actually the aftermath and how, this affected you spiritually? Like, what did you do? Like, what did he do? I can definitely say yes. I definitely believe my ex-husband did do some spiritual things against me. I believe that. I mean, he's a man of faith after all, isn't it? And, they are in their prayer closets with their psalms, doing all types of things to get against their enemy. I honestly, however, I'm not going to put that on this platform, okay? If you want to hear more of the spiritual aftermath of what may have happened or the things that I definitely experienced, you will have to come to my Patreon for that discussion. I'm so sorry to put that behind a paywall, but one thing I've noticed with the internet is a lot of us have different interpretations of spiritual things. In one of my previous videos, for example, I did note on the fact that I believed that some of the things that I encountered were spiritual attacks. And I had a comment saying, oh, it's not always spiritual things. You've made a wrong choice and stuff, which is obviously very true. Absolutely. I'm not even discarding that. But they also suggested perhaps I didn't live up to a certain standard that I would have wanted for myself. And so, it wasn't a bad comment, but it made me understand that not everybody has the same understanding of me when it comes to matters of spiritual things. So I'm particularly mentioning it because I feel that three things are connected. Okay, your emotions, your spiritual life, and your mental state. We're speaking specifically about mental things in this video, but when it comes to spiritual things as well, oh baby, one thing I would say is everything is spiritual. Everything. So if I had recognized it as a spiritual attack, that's exactly what I'm going to place it. And I have all the proof and evidence, but not everyone will understand that. And this is why I wouldn't elaborate on YouTube of how things affected me spiritually. But what I would say is come to Patreon for that discussion. And I would say a lot of my mental battle, okay, was being manipulated from the church, okay? Religious manipulation is a thing, okay? Church leaders cult leaders, I should actually say, can really manipulate you spiritually. And again, I'm not going to elaborate on that, but a lot of my hurt and abuse came from a certain mindset which religious folk can use against you. And I'm going to even start with the mental abuse actually started from the church I was at before I even met the guy. And so what I do feel that this is what I think it is. You attract based on your current energy and your current state. I clearly attracted the worst of the worst from my previous situation in the previous church. Now, can you guys imagine? The leader of that ministry was a female pastor who actually had dabbled in very wicked aspects of the occult world. And she openly and honestly shared that with us. And on leaving the church, I actually found out and discovered that she was diagnosed with schizophrenia. Imagine, I was under that controlled environment for 4 or 5 years before I then took all of that fear and anxiety to another ministry. Of course, I'm attracting all sorts of madness. I hope you get where I'm coming from. But again, when it comes to conversations of spirituality, I'm not going to delve too deep because I feel that a lot of minds just won't get it. So let's just surface and get back onto the mental thing for the most part and what I really experienced in terms of the mental battle. Mentally, I believed if I had attached myself to a good church, that it will save me and it will help me, progress spiritually, and it will certainly make me become the perfect Christian almost, and so therefore I'm in a safe space. It was then eventually some type of awakening that made me see that I wasn't in a safe space at all. And so I started to work to the proceedings of saving myself. Now let's talk about trauma, because a lot of our trauma that stems perhaps from previous experiences, i.e. that church, the culty church, and even our childhood can really take a play on your mental state. And that's where the battle really, really kind of sets in, because all of the things you're thinking is those experiences you had and how much you're trying to avoid it because you knew that it made you feel a certain type of way. So there was the dealing with the mental battle within the marriage whilst I was within the church, and then also kind of balancing it with my previous childhood trauma. Okay, of, previously being raped as a teen and previously being groomed and, having a child as early as I did, a special needs child at that, being abandoned. A lot of the traumas that I had experienced was a part of the mental battle. So as you can imagine, mentally, I was not in a firm ground, So I think a lot of my abuse became blurry to me. I didn't even see it for what it was, which was obviously trying to destroy me. So where somebody asks me, how did you not end up in a mental asylum? I've got to think perhaps it's because I didn't actually realize I was in such a dangerous position until the awakening happened that made me say, woo, I got to get out of this. Your spouse needs to be able to support you emotionally so that mentally you're able to manage, especially if you're someone who has experienced a lot of trauma in their childhood. And he was very aware of all of the things that happened to me as a child. The grape, the this, the that. He knew it. And he dismissed a lot of it. Oh, it's the past. Forget about it. You are a new creation in Christ. And that's cute. I get it. I understand you're trying to make me move past, staying within that space. But that coupled up with you not actually nurturing and supporting me to get over those traumas, the dismissal of that alone was actually traumatizing. And it's something that kept on drumming in my mind. So when I did the video on Instagram of marriage versus divorce, kind of celebrating my weight loss, it wasn't just about the weight. I'm begging you, please. Of course, physically you can see the weight, and even the caption says, 170 pounds down. It wasn't about that. This was a release of also the mental strain, the emotional toil that it took upon me when I was in that marriage, okay? And honestly, I had to deal with being in a toxic space and also divert from being who I truly was in order for the marriage to survive and for me to survive. Do you know how much of a mental strain that takes upon you? Because you're always having to overthink the next step, the next plan. I had to operate in the masculine energy. Why? Because my ex-husband was absolutely useless and he didn't have a clue of how to actually be a man and uphold this marriage based on him essentially using a healthy initiative to steer the marriage forward. I constantly found myself having to battle injustices within marriage. I had to always defend myself. I also had to deal with the fact that his interests were more of the church and of Pastor Chris than me. And so in my mind, the mental battle is me saying, you know what, I can never be good enough. I'm never enough. It's never going to be, I'm never going to be the ideal wife even for you. Even in your eyes, you're going to see me as disgust. I'm not going to give you the best side of myself for you to feel fulfilled as a man and as a husband. Because as well, I'm not being poured into. This is a balance. It takes a trained effort. And what it was me constantly outpouring into him so that he feels that he is being loved and looked after, whereas I was receiving little to none of that. It's another type of mental battle when with all of these things that you're sharing that it is a problem, let's resolve it, let's work on it. And all you're getting is being ignored, being silenced, deliberately. No effort to, okay, babes, let's work on this. Even explaining yourself. There's very few of that. It's just, I'm going to ignore her. I'm going to ignore her. I'm going to ignore her until she gets what? Until she gets angry. And now here comes the emotions. Because I'm no longer crying anymore. I've become so masculine, operating in masculine male energy. What is a tear? What is a cry? Like, what is that even? Do you really want to know what really can make you lose your mind as well? Especially as it pertains to me, that's for sure, is losing your womanhood and your femininity. Not being able to operate as a woman, feeling safe, feeling secure, feeling that at the end of the day, someone's got me. I never felt that. And so therefore, that alone is a mental battle in itself, because you're now being the husband and the wife. And it's like, you really got to pick a side. You've really got to be the wife and just be the wife, if anything. What am I trying to be the husband for? Unless, okay, there's a sickness. My husband is really unwell and I have to step up, okay? I have to do all of the laboring work that a man may have to do in the home for a period, because that is what I have to do to support my family. But that wasn't the case, because this was a long-term need for me to operate in the masculine energy, a long-term need for me to operate as a man in order for us to survive the marriage. So coping for me was to survive. I became less emotional, as I said. Like, I barely ever cried for months and months at a time. I'm not crying. I'm just go, go, go. Work, work, work. Hustle, hustle, hustle. Plan, plan, plan. Forward, forward, forward. And it results in me becoming an angry woman. But you know what? A turning point did actually happen for me. And in not the most pleasant way. And I've shared this before. This was, of course, the day of my actual attack. And I was rescued by a man who came to my doorstep to save me from being murked completely by him. And, you know, up until that point, I had been operating, trying to make things work, be the boss of it all, okay? Be the big boy, if you will. And that one time, a man comes to my door and rescues me. That day, I was in the cell of the police station because, you know, he got me arrested following that incident. I was in a cell, completely vulnerable, stripped bare. And that is when I cried. I had never cried like that in my life, or in a while. I wouldn't say in my life. But that is when I really cried. I was finally rescued, actually. Although there were some niggly bits I had to deal with afterwards. But I was finally rescued. And all I had to do was face myself and my emotions. And in that cell, I would not forget all of the mental things that were going through my mind. Obviously, I was concerned about my son. I was worrying about how I'm going to get my home back. I was worrying about what was going to be the fate of me. Would I go to jail because of all of the false accusations he was putting against me to the police? But more than that, it actually was a turning point for me because I now was in a vulnerable place. And I knew that the next step going forward was a requirement for, first of all, for him to leave me alone completely and stand on my own 2 feet. But more so, allow my vulnerability to take lead for someone to actually pour into me somewhat. And at this point, obviously I'm speaking about God. I had to now allow the space for God to pour into me, because that really was the only option that I could take at the time. And I'm glad I did, because it kind of almost pushed me to the point where God reminded me that you need help. You need to be taken care of. Allow me to do that. And so when things started to fall into place in my favor, that was the act of God taking place. But before that, it was a constant battle in my mind that I had to stand firm for myself. And obviously, there's an element of you having to stand firm and be strong. But knowing that now I'm not taking the lead, because the way things have transpired, is only God that can save me from this one. So just when I thought, okay, I'm in a safe place. And I guess I was, because now I got the monster out of my life. This was after I was released from being held in custody, and I did the necessary procedure to secure my home and keep him out of the house, and got my non-molestation order. Then the real test of time set in. And if you're really asking where the noticeable mental battle took place, it was within that period. This is where I became severely depressed. So depressed. I remember there was one Saturday morning, and I mean, I'm a great mum, okay? I give that to myself. I try. I am very hands-on. But this morning I couldn't get up. And my son would have been about 5-6 years old at the time. I closed all my curtains. I stuck in my bed all day, had my quilt over my head, and I cried and cried and cried. And my son came into the room, and he came into my bed, and he was like, "Mummy, everything is going to be okay. You're okay." This is my 5-year-old. That hope is what made me constantly say to myself, I have to keep going. Despite how difficult it was, I wanted to take my life, and I had attempted. But imagine that, and then also becoming extremely ill. Trigger warning, okay? I became mysteriously sick out of nowhere, where my bowel twisted. I've shared it on my main channel. My bowel twisted. And I'll probably do a different video about it on this channel now, because it's been a long time coming. I can re-talk about it now. But that happened, and the mental strain of that alone, after what I had been through up until that point, and having to deal with having to have an emergency operation to save my life, I can't even, you guys. It was a lot. It was a lot. It was just a lot, you know. Can you imagine as well, in that period, whilst I was healing from that emergency operation, weird stuff started happening to me. People started to turn against me, my loved ones included. Even physical abuse. Yes, it happened again. Okay? I was at that point a target for every abuse possible. And I remember speaking to my counselor about it. I said, I just feel that I'm a target for abuse. That why does everybody want to hurt me? All I could do was just cry and just wallow and that energy alone, by the way, is never good enough, because the more you keep yourself in that emotional state, the more you keep attracting the nasties and the monsters. And over time, that's all I kept on attracting, because I couldn't quite fix my emotional state from all of the trauma that I had endured up until that point. And so I also had PTSD quite severely. I was always looking over my shoulder. I was anxious, although I had a non-molestation order in place. You know, look at what happened to Sarah Duffy, for example. I was still fearful that something may come at me and still eliminate me in some way. At this point, I didn't even feel safe spiritually, because I was constantly met with somebody who wanted to hurt me. And I just don't know why. Actually, I do know why. And this is why you need to come on Patreon, because it was a spiritual thing. It was a spiritual thing. That's all I'll say on that. And then you attract distractions as well. And then you can't think straight. So I've seen a lot of comments, and it's obviously something that I actively did. I couldn't quite focus. I was so distracted. And when you're dealing with so much trauma and abuse, you are mentally distracted, and focusing on your element and on your growth and personal development becomes close to impossible. I was trying to move on. And so what you did find is me always pivoting. Today I was this, tomorrow I'm that, tomorrow this, the day after that, I'm in a new thing. You know, I remember starting, you know, digital marketing. Then I ended up in real estate. Then I could not focus. Distractions left, right and center. Distracting people coming to me, distracting men approaching me, distracting me as well. Women wanting to fight me for no reason. Like, you had no idea at the time. I was just attracting the worst of the worst of the worst, and I couldn't settle. I couldn't land. I couldn't just say, this is me and I'm confident in this space. And it's so ironic, because if you know me, I am somebody that I'm very sure of myself. I know where I'm going. I know what I want. I achieve high, above and beyond my expectations. And perhaps that's part of the problem. I had to bring myself to a state of humility and grounding, and really accept the change or the changes that were happening in my life, and stop fighting against them. And with that, I was able to find a bit of a middle ground for me, and really allow God to lead me to the next phase of my life. But the distractions were a lot in that process. Like, okay, I've gotten rid of these monsters, but more kept on coming, especially men trying to manipulate me and hurt me. Female friendships that I ended up in, and it was just weird. Long-term friendships of what I thought, oh, this is a good thing, again, ended up in women who felt that they needed to oppress me somehow or silence me, lock me away, discard me, oppress me. It was just a weird space. That energy where you can't think straight would unfortunately attract those monsters. And so deciding even what you want to do with your life becomes a mission. It becomes so distorted, pretty much. So we talk about all of that, but what about your physical health? Because that's a very important aspect of obviously remaining healthy and keeping your well-being in check. As you know, I had weight loss surgery, so there was a lot of maintenance that I had to do. Luckily for me, or at least good for me, I was able to maintain a healthy eating lifestyle to keep, my weight balanced. Also, I was exercising, and honestly, exercising and working out is also good on the mental health. I promise you. Going for walks, etc. I don't drive now. I walk everywhere. That has been helpful. However, there is vitamins and other types of things, B12 injections that you need to take. And honestly, I neglected those. Because for me, I was trying to survive financially, keep my head above water, look after my children. All of those things were more important, and I neglected those. So I saw all of a sudden is I was weak, and I was in a bed, and I couldn't move, and my body was aching me. And I have low iron, so I'm anemic. And I'm supposed to be having my iron meds and folic acids and all types of vitamins, vitamin C, vitamin D, going in for my B12 shots. Completely neglected that. My mindset just couldn't focus on the things that will upkeep me. And so it really took a toll on my body. And one day I was lying down, I was like, I'm in pain. Anxiety as well. If you've ever experienced anxiety, you feel it in your chest and it hurts. Okay, and I was feeling pain in my chest. I was like, this is not right. I will get up and I'll fall back down because I'm dizzy. I said, let me go to the GP. And when I called up the GP and I went and I took bloods, they called me immediately and they said, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you alive? Your bloods are extremely dangerous. Get to a hospital now. So I had to go for emergency, had to get a blood drip, iron infusion, and bring me back to life again. Because of my ill mental state, I could not focus on what I required to nurture my body. And then one of the things that really, really was an interesting turn for me was alcohol. And I have briefly shared along the years how alcohol actually became a bit of a problem. Yes, I resorted to the bottle at a point. Straight after the divorce, and I was never somebody who drank heavily at all. In fact, I didn't really like drink. I don't really like the taste of alcohol like that. So me starting to drink and it becoming from one, half a glass to, a couple of glasses to half a bottle to a full bottle, from wine to vodka. Okay, what's going on here now, Chanel? And back to the thing of attracting weird people. When you put yourself in those weird energies where you become, codependent on alcohol to cope with your woes and issues and your mental issues, okay? You attract weirdos as well. You attract a friend who will sit down and drink with you. And I had a friend. I did share that video. I've actually kind of unlisted it because it's bad energy right now. From what we're talking about right now, I just don't want that out there. But I had a friend who was also going through a divorce, and we were together drinking. And honestly, before I knew it, I was becoming a, dare I say, alcoholic. I've stopped drinking for 4 months now. Hooray to me. I've stopped drinking. Alcohol is not good, okay? And what I kind of did was to stop it temporarily at the point where I realized it was becoming a problem as a way of, detoxing and fasting. But the more I kept on going, the less the cravings came. And so I was like, you know what, I'm going to keep on going. It's been 4 months now. I'm going to aim for a year, and I'm going to keep on going of not drinking alcohol. It can really disrupt your spirit. and really affect your mental focus and your emotions. Okay, alcohol. And I'm studying more of that now, and feeling quite proud of myself that now that's something that I don't depend on to cope with my mental issues, or, you know, the things that I was, you know, so overwhelmed with following all of the trauma and the abuse that I had been through. And of course, the aftermath of all of it and having to cope and survive within that period. So what do I do now? I first of all started to reject everything that was bad for me. Bad men, bad people, accepting this lonesome period. Please, if I don't have a friend, that's okay. If I don't have a man, that's more than okay. Do you know that sexual currency is also a destroyer of your mental state too? And so ain't nobody up in my bed. I'm definitely not here. Or I'm certainly not getting in anyone else's bed. I'm also not engaging in false conversations of things that just doesn't edify me and grow me. I'm really accepting this lonesome period as a period to grow myself, and rejecting everything that clearly is a harm to my mental state of being. Also focus on my healing. I had to set time apart to focus on that healing journey and really truly allow it to manifest into my life properly. And it's going to take some time. Healing is a long journey. And part of the healing for me was also putting myself first. Because quite often I'm putting others before me. The only person I should put before myself is my children. Okay? And okay, it's nice to kind of, you know, think of the other person. But if you neglect yourself in that as well, then you're losing yourself, and essentially you're losing your mind. Identifying wasters, identifying bullshitters, identifying people who are going to soak and suck out my energy, and what I'm building it to become is going to be your greatest saving grace, honestly. And also honoring myself and the new state that I'm in, accepting it for what it is, honoring myself as a queen mother, and knowing that I also have a community to inspire. That will be you guys online. That will be my community back home. That will be my fellow Ghanaians, whether it's in the UK, USA, wherever you are in the world. People are relying on me, you know. I know I don't need to show up every day for everybody because I can't, I'm one person, but people are counting on me to make it. I do consider myself as an insight to what can be hopeful for you. And whilst that's a huge responsibility, it's part of my calling. And when I recognize that, I have to treat myself the best way I could. I have to also endure patience and allow each step of the process to take its time and unravel as it's meant to. I also am enjoying my life. I'm doing fun things with my children. We went to the fun fair recently. I take them out. We go shopping. We go to London. Whatever. I haven't quite left the country just yet because, you know, we're still kind of firming things up and stuff. And I'm looking forward to that very soon, actually. Enjoying my life, enjoying this rebuilding, not looking at my rebuilding state as a burden or a curse to me, but rather a chance to make it again, and rather an opportunity for me to make it even greater. I've accepted this humble time in my life where I can actually gain a lot more clarity, have much more vision for myself, a bigger, clearer clarity and clearer vision for my future and for, you know, the people that I love, and even my community of who I'm trying to inspire. And with that, you know, I aim to do that with integrity, with honesty, being honest to myself, being honest with others, and really standing my ground and showing up in my truth the best way I could. Mental health is something that our community frown upon, or we are ashamed of. It's, and I'm talking to the Black community. I'm talking to the African community. You know, I don't know who told us that, you know, going to church is going to wash our problems away. I think that's a very one-sided opinion. I think it's more than even just your spiritual man, even if it's not, you know, church, even if it's spirituality, even if it's some type of occult thing that you do, I don't know, divination. That alone is not enough to rebuilding yourself. You've got to consciously make the effort to making certain changes in your life and in your mental state, and changing your mindset to achieving a positive outcome of what you want for yourself. You've got to consciously make that effort. And I know it sounds and looks like hard work, but perhaps it is. Perhaps it might just be. But wouldn't you rather put in the work? Okay, don't be lazy. Put in the work to work on yourself. It's so not easy with all of the things that we're faced with in life, but I truly believe that it's very achievable if you at least are realistic with yourself. Just be realistic and have integrity. Start there and accept the situation that you're in. And when I mean accept it, I don't mean accept it and stand on it and just let yourself go. I mean accept it as in take it as a sign that it's meant to happen like this, and therefore the test is for you to work on it so that you come out of it. There's also all types of resources to get yourself mental support when you're going through certain battles. There's resources here free on the internet. This is a source. My channel is a source. There's many thousands and hundreds and millions of channels out there. That's also a source. Okay, therapy, counseling, your GP, your spiritual elders, self-care, well-being. It's all sources and tools that is going to assist you into getting into a better mental state. It's a process and it's a journey, but it really does start with you deciding what you want for yourself. So, that is, you know, a mental breakdown of where I'm going, what I've been through over the past several years. There's so much more to come. Please do stay tuned and subscribed, and you'll see me in my next video.